Yeah, I could hear it
Maybe it's,
halfway through a sentence. It went away.
I think maybe it's on
No,
my device microphone.
oh, see, there, just cut off device micro. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, BJ.
I got an attempted scam on your behalf earlier in the week, on Monday. I got an email from you saying I'm in a meeting and I need some help for something, and I was like, weird, but okay. And
The amount of I get so many crazy scams on my dockyard email address, like things
yeah,
like threatening to expose some skeletons in closet type stuff that never happened. It's like send me uh, 0.1 Bitcoin to this random address somewhere.
Jesus.
It's crazy. I think these whoever's, I mean, more than one person, obviously, they're just they scan LinkedIn or something, look for anyone that is like CEO level or
Yeah,
and because I know a bunch of other C-level execs that they get the same thing.
same thing. Yeah, it was one of those moments where I was really glad for their whole remote thing because I was like, okay, what do you need me to do? And they're like, I need you to buy some eBay gift cards and bring them to me where I am. And I was like,
Fun.
yeah, that's not Brian. Brian's in Boston. I'm not going to Boston. All right, we got everybody. Um, so we'll just do a productivity round robin, kind of where everybody is. But I do want to check in, Hans. I know you've been assigned to some client work. Is there anybody else that's been tapped yet?
Me and Hans are both on the same project.
Okay. I heard about Hans, but not about Luke. Okay. So
Yeah, Hans is officially on, and I'm just shadowing until parental leave happens for someone.
ah,
Rebecca, just so you're aware, like we are posting the Zoom meeting now in the public Elixir Lumen chat room.
oh, okay.
And so from time to time, there may be people that join that are new, and they're just primarily there to watch. But some people may speak up and ask questions.
Okay.
But it does mean we need to be more circumspect about what we're doing when it's not Lumen.
Gotcha. Okay, so who wants to go first for update?
I can go. So based on the feedback or the discussion that Hans and I had last week, I started working on trying to make the changes that he had proposed there. The data that he pointed me towards is enough for what I need, but my first approach at getting like the information in the form it needs to be in had bugs in it. And I spent the last couple of days trying to trace down what those were exactly. And I got that sorted. And I'm right now basically working through making the necessary changes there. Basically, what was happening is values being passed along as implicit arguments in EIR were not being mapped correctly. So in the middle of compilation somewhere, it'd blow up because an argument was mapped to the wrong type or the wrong value, or to one that didn't exist, like at an incorrect index. So my approach to that needed to change a little bit. So that's what I'm working on right now. I'm pretty close to having those changes done. I can start testing again. Assuming that all goes smoothly, then that's pretty much it. There's not really a whole lot else that's required for like an initial release of something. Well, at least, to people that are willing to, use something as bleeding edge. But all the other fundamental stuff is there. So just working through the bugs basically.
Cool. So at that point, do we do some sort of an announcement to that, finished point?
Yeah, I think probably the first stage of this would be to get it in front of Hans and Luke so that they can kind of poke at it and try and break it, or definitely break it and then tell me what is broken.
Rebecca, are you
And then
talking about
probably
like are you talking about like a big announcement, like of a marketing type announcement?
Or something to the Lumen community in the Slack channel or on Twitter, or I don't know. That's what I'm
I
asking.
mean, we'll definitely mention to people that
Yeah.
we have a fundamental release ready,
Yeah.
regardless
Yeah,
of whether
exactly.
it's great or not.
I mean,
I don't think a marketing announcement works here. It's just kind of like it's a rollout, and
Yeah.
it's going to require a lot of people to bang their heads against it before we are confident to like really expose it at a higher level.
I would say at the most public it will get is one, it'll be at, if it works, it'll be at FOSDEM. And I might say for my personal account that I talked about it at FOSDEM, and then the Get Lumen account would retweet my tweet about it. And that might be the most public it will be. And maybe people will notice that when the compiler's ready, are we going to start using the master branch again for the release, or are we just like not using master anymore?
I mean, my branch is forked off of develop. So
right, like we're using
master is going to be like the release branch, basically.
Okay.
That's where I plan to do releases.
So potentially the master branch will get updated if we're confident enough in this being that sort of release.
Yeah, I think that would be the goal, is to, once we've got something that we know works on at least like a target platform, say Mac OS or whatever. I don't think there's too much of a fundamental difference between a Linux box and Mac OS machine at this point, but we support like that configuration to build like a WASM module or whatever the criteria may be, and then, God damn it. And then we cut a branch there and freeze master until we've got like another like cycle of fixes and so on. And if people want to be following along, then they can do that on develop. But we'll try and keep master in a state where whatever is there, if it's built into an executable, it works to some degree, whatever our criteria is for works.
Yeah, so it'll probably show up also on the Lumen channel on the Elixir Lang Slack. I don't know if we want to put on the Elixir forum. That might be too wide. It might get too many people piling on. And we definitely don't want it to be a Dockyard blog post.
We can
Probably
play
not.
it by ear, I guess, and see how much interest we get just off of people hearing the rumor of something being ready.
It could be a tweet too, just kind of like, kind of say,
Right.
hey, this is, but again, the message has to be like, this is, 0.0.01 status type
Right.
thing.
Come help us, work out the kinks kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then question I had for you, Luke, was you had mentioned that you were able to spawn up to 100,000 processes in browser.
Yeah, so the main problem with that is it makes the tab use a lot of memory. So like the like misbehave, it doesn't do the misbehaving. Do you want to shut down the script thing in Chrome? But it does the thing where like, if you're not actively looking at UI elements, it kind of deprioritizes the tab.
Yeah.
So unless I scroll to the bottom of the 200,000 row table, it doesn't keep adding rows. Like
there's a way to turn that off.
But so the problem with that is I never,
even when the tab is open.
Yeah, I have to scroll to the bottom of the table, or just kind of like the browser does something where it's deprioritizing, because it got really slow about adding the new tabs, the new rows to the thing. And I could look up with Task Manager that it was sitting at like multiple gigs of memory somehow. Even though WASM is limited to 2 gigs, it was above that somehow. So it must have been the DOM elements too, which makes sense.
What you'll see in like Task Manager and such anyways is the virtual memory of the browser, not the actual tab allocation.
So the main point was, from that test, we know it does not crash, and that the GC resizer works, because that's how I found the reentrant bug that I was fixing. Was that it tried to do a resize partway through after we had popped the arguments off the stack, so it re-entered the function with the arguments for the function not there anymore, which happened before with us too, and that's why I did the big change.
If it wasn't for the DOM element issue, like how long was it taking to spawn?
They just run when 100,000 is super fast. I could run it. I don't know if I have it up.
I mean, we don't need to do it right now. I'm just curious.
Like, the main point is it runs fine.
I would be interested to see what it's doing in like a semi-realistic scenario, like where you've got all those processes trying to do something active.
Right. The one thing about the DOM elements thing is that it's probably like, you wouldn't have a table that large. Like, if you had infinite scroll, like, the DOM elements would disappear. So it's good that it does not crash, but it's okay that it's slow, because no one would do that. Like, you wouldn't model a web page that way in modern development.
It's always risky saying or guessing what people won't do with it, though. It's like someone's gonna do something crazy.
At least if you know what the boundaries are.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's still pretty impressive. And you said that was just due to there was a memory leak that you discovered?
It's not a memory leak. It's just, for some reason, the tab just gets really slow. And so like, after a certain point, the like command down thing that usually gets you to the bottom of the web page just stops working. And I have to literally scroll the scroll bar to make it work. So like, it is putting too much pressure on the browser's rendering thing in Chrome to get there. So like, I don't think it's our problem. It's Chrome doesn't expect you to do something this silly.
Did you try it in Firefox?
No, I didn't. There's no reason why it shouldn't work, but I haven't.
I think Firefox's rendering engine is more performant now.
Oh, okay. Like I knew the bridge was. So yeah, you're probably right. Firefox would actually be better.
But the performance was okay. It was a respectable frame per second.
Yeah. Realistically, it starts to get slow after a while. So I think it's something with the memory it's using, like that. Not necessarily on our allocator, but the request that it eventually has to make to the actual OS or the underlying system in the browser is what gets too slow.
I would be interested to see at what point it dips below 60 frames per second.
Oh, yeah. That is interesting, because I do know that caught me off guard was that we did the demo during the keynote at ElixirConf. It did actually give a warning that we were exceeding the request animation frame window. But personally, when not giving the keynote, so I'm not sure. Because demo gods.
I was going to say, I knew he was giving the demo.
We might have to try and come up with an example that does something a little bit more on the like animation rendering side to try and see how choppy it gets.
Yeah, we'd have to do something old school animation style where we wouldn't do CSS transforms, so of course.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so I just ran 100,000 with chain run, which is the one where it just does the process stuff and prints nothing. That one took let's see, it's 6,288,000, so it's 6 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty good for scheduling 100,000 processes.
Yeah. And I would have to add tracing or instrumentation to figure out like how much work we're doing in each frame. Like I don't have anything set up to be able to measure that. So I don't know how many times we're going back into the loop to do that. But with the 6 seconds, it would be, 6 times 60. So it should be 360-ish reinvocations of the scheduler to do that much work. And mind you,
Yeah.
when the tab went away, like for the 100,000, trying to do all the DOM nodes, it's like taking, like it just kept slowing down. So there's no way to really tell how long it would take if I would have kept it up, because I just let it go in the background. I thought, oh, it will just do its thing and eventually tell me the time. And it just, without me looking at the tab, it deprioritized it and didn't update it.
The real question will be when you're actually like constructing and modifying a fairly large virtual DOM, like how performant does that end up being in practice? Because having that as a sort of a core primitive is going to be pretty important.
Yeah, I think what we could do is if we go the live EX path, we could do some of the game ones. Like the obvious one would be the snake demo that Chris made, and just see like obviously the first thing is like we better be faster than us talking to a server.
Yeah.
And like I don't think that's true, but right now like I don't have anything hooked up for keyboard input, so I can't just try it. It's it's a lot of stuff to build up just to test performance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if so I see a lot of like Elm comparing itself to like React Native frameworks. Is there like some kind of benchmarking thing that like standard thing that they use to
DBmon, the DBmon demo was supposed to be that, but we didn't get far enough on the interpreter to do it all the way.
Gotcha. Got it.
I think it's still worth doing DBmon at some point.
Yeah, so
when we're there,
DBmon the right way will necessitate the being able to call in. Well, maybe not. I have to remember how because like for the DBmon demo, they usually give you an external source that generates the random data, and like your code then eats that. So like we would have to at least be able to call their stuff, but that'd be fine. It doesn't have to call into our app, I don't think. But I can't remember exactly how it's set up normally. Or if that's even part of the rules. Maybe you can set up however you want as long as it's just a random source. In which case we can do it just fine. We can do the random source in Elixir. Other stuff for my status, obviously fixed that reentrancy bug, fixed a different bug with spawn chain where like I was using is tuple in the demo, but when Paul switched to the encoded term thing that lets the term format be different for each arch, is tuple only works on the actual like tuple header. It doesn't work on the box pointing to the tuple, so that's wrong to use that way now. And so that was causing a weird bug. And then other stuff was Mike Wilkerson, I think is his last name, had a bunch of PRs open from like November before we got distracted and did a bunch of other stuff before the break. And so I got all his PRs merged. And then the other big one was going through with the IntelliJ Rust or Rust language server, the dupe detection and deduping a bunch of the test stuff, which cut between like a minute of the compile time of like a cargo clean compile of the test for runtime. It helps more if you use the SS catch, which I told everyone to use in the public channel, but of course that disappears. So I would recommend that for everyone on the team too. Use the S cache that Rust recommends. It helps a lot.
I did find one really annoying bug, which is that when I bought my new laptop, something about Catalina is different because the dynamic linking that I had working in the compiler like dynamically linking the compiler libraries, LLVM and that kind of thing, no longer works. I have to static link the compiler, which is super annoying because it takes like a minute and a half to compile it and link it, versus the dynamic linking path, which is more or less instantaneous. I haven't had time to look at it, but super annoying. It's basically, I was relying on that for doing like quick turnaround iteration stuff, and now I have to sit and wait for it to compile every once in a while. But
one thing I thought about while working on the reentrancy bug, I don't. So the reentrancy could have messed up the heap or the stack, so it's not a real bug. But when I was trying to debug it, under certain scenarios, which I wasn't able to reproduce, an attempt to do the, where you get the process and you acquire heap, and then you debug print it and you get the nice heap stack thing you and me both worked on, Paul. It had another thing where it couldn't do it and it crashed. So like there was something in the heap that it could not read and it crashed. But since it was during another bug, I don't know if it's a real bug or not. And it definitely happened on the WASM target because it was me trying to print it for WASM. Because that's where,
well, I mean, yeah, if you see it again,
yeah,
definitely stash away like a repro case somewhere, and we can take a deeper look at it.
Yeah. I forgot. In that, I also WASM's printer of, I forget what it was. There was some type where like, I think it's the debug printer or it might be the term printer wasn't as nice on non-x86-64. So now they're all the same across all the architectures. Oh, right. It was, you only had the cool thing where like, you had box and then you also showed whether it was literal or value.
Yeah.
That was only on x86-64. You didn't print the internal value of a box on the other architecture, so it was hard to use on WASM-32. So I just copied that over to all the arches. The code is literally the same now. I don't know if there's a way with the way we have the arches set up to actually share the code. I guess we could macro it. The only problem is 32, of course, still needs to print 32 bits wide instead of 64. So like there's that one literal for format that has to be different, but that's it.
The way the Arch stuff is set up right now is about as modular as it can be, at least without some major refactoring of all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, there's some duplication there, but I don't think there's enough abstraction or enough need for abstraction at this point to try and figure out a better way to approach it. But one of the things that I tried to do when I went through it again this fall was tried to make it so that there weren't as many places where if we made a change, we would have to update a bunch of other places. And I think that's more or less, I've even improved that a little bit on my cogen branch, but not any real major changes. They're like runtime visible, just stuff that affects me on the compiler side. Mostly because when I'm generating like constant values and things like that for the compiler, I need to be able to do that in a platform specific way. So I have to look up what the current host target is and what the target is, and then resolve like what kind of header to generate and what kind of type to use on that target and things like that. Those abstractions are the ones that I've improved a bit. But other than that, it's a little annoying. I don't like necessarily the way it's set up right now, but there just hasn't been time to try and rethink it in a way that's cleaner. Maybe sometime down the road.
Yeah, that's fine.
So who else wants to update Hans or Brian Joseph?
I mean, like at the start of this week, my hands were at the point where I could start working normally again. So I have spent some time just getting like a development environment set up on my Mac that could work for me. So that took a bit of time. And other than that, I've just been like continuing work on getting back into what I was working on before. Just like the the pretty printing.
Gotcha. Right, Joseph?
I don't really have anything. I'm just trying to get back into the swing of a normal schedule again with the holidays over. I don't have anything.
Oh, Hans, there's one thing that I wanted to bring up. It's not super important right now, but it is mildly annoying. Is that I don't know if it's something I'm doing or if it's in EIR, but it seems like the way the parsing and things are generated is not deterministic. And I assume it's probably because the hash maps and everything that are being used are using an unstable hash algorithm.
Do you mean like the name of the blocks and stuff? They change order.
Yeah, the order of the blocks. I don't think the order of the operations in them changes, but all I know is that I can pretty predictably like recompile, go over and click in my editor, and things move around, even though it's the same code.
That's a bug. I have like ensured throughout building it that everything uses that everything is stable across compiles, because that sort of stuff is really annoying. So if that happens, then that is definitely a bug. So that's worth like opening an issue about. Or even
if I had to guess, it might be in the lowering utils piece, because that's probably the one area I'm using more than you are, and why I've seen it. But
probably. That's a good point. Are you iterating?
It may also be on my end. I don't think so, because the EIR that I'm looking at when I'm seeing these changes, I dump before I really do anything. So the only thing
are you iterating over any of the hash maps in lower utils?
Over the blocks, yes, but that comes after I dump the EIR text. I'm talking about. So like when I'm running my tests, I always dump the text output of the current module after I've done the passes and everything on it, the simplification and everything, but before any of my lowering passes run. And then I have a whole bunch of debug logging that tells me what's happening. And that way I can compare side by side.
You're just going from Erlang files?
Yeah, Erlang source.
Yeah, that should be stable. So I
can give you more details once I know exactly what it is that's moving around. Maybe that'll help identify.
I mean, I'll try first and see if I could just reproduce it on a simple file. Then you don't need to do anything more. But if
I can send you the Erlang file I'm using too.
Yeah, sure, that will
help. It's just like a simple one that tries a few different operations to get a variety of IR.
Does basic ITER on HashMap, is it a insertion order? It's not sorted by default if you just do a normal ITER. So if there's
on a regular hash map, it's the hashing algorithm has a random salt in it.
Yeah, it's unsorted.
Okay.
So it's non-deterministic as well.
So we actually, instead of using ITER, we have to use a sort ITER if we want the outputs to always look nice. Or
no,
if
you can just use a stable hash, and that's what the like FX hash map and some of the other variations are for.
So the stable one removes the randomizer?
No, it just means that you get the same order every time. It doesn't mean it's in any order. It's just in the same order every time.
Right, but if it's in the same order every time and you do a recompile, the random salt would change, wouldn't it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. A stable hash doesn't have randomness introduced.
Okay.
Whereas the standard library hash maps do use a hash that has a source of randomness.
They use zip hash, I think.
Yeah. But there's like Rust itself uses what became like this FX hash that's now a library. And there's one other version of it that I think is actually slightly better performing, like faster, but I haven't really looked into it all that much. But I think what we're using for the most part is the FX hashes. I don't know. I haven't looked everywhere in EIR, but I'm assuming that's what you were using, Hans, since you're using CraneLift.
I use a lot of, I use that in some places, but I use a lot of B-tree maps.
Oh, sure.
Because
yeah.
I have really small keys in many cases, so they like work really well.
Yeah, so I mean, for the most part, I think it's probably just like one place that, for whatever reason, has some variation in it, because it's not enough difference each time for it to be like a major problem, but it's enough of a difference each time where I can't be sure what I'm seeing is the same IR that it was the last time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's really, really annoying. Makes it impossible to debug.
Yeah, at least by looking at the IR.
Yeah.
So in any case, that was the only major thing. I have like a variety of small things on my branch. So I just have like the EIR repo patched in my own cargo manifest right now to point to my local path. But there's a handful of things that are in there, mostly just like adding missing implementations of some traits that I found I needed. I think I'm going to have to revisit some of those changes once I get all the codegen changes wrapped up, just to see how many of those survived, like the need for them. You know what I mean?
Is
When
it
you're going,
is it just like equality traits and hash
yeah,
and stuff,
things
or
like
is it-
that. Basic stuff to make it usable. Like for example, in like my incremental query engine and the compiler, there were a bunch of missing traits to make it so you could return those objects. So what I ended up doing was cheating by essentially wrapping those in a reference counted smart pointer, and then just implementing my own versions of those traits for those types. And it worked out fine. It's probably better that way anyways. But I think just in general, there's areas where it is kind of handy to have that. And I think too, there's probably some of the built-in enumerations and such that could be just marked as rep or C, because then I could pass them straight through to like the C or C++ side. But right now what I am having to do is map it to my own types.
Yeah.
So a whole lot of like stupid redundant copying happening.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's not too many places where that's necessary. There's just one or two places where I know that I'm doing way more of that than needs to be. And it's usually the small types, right? The ones that you're doing all the time versus the big ones. The big ones don't really have any missing traits or anything. It's just small things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that might be one other thing that I'll try and put together some notes on. To try and put that into one PR now would just be messy. So probably what I'm going to do when I do push this first release of things is just push things up to my fork of EIR with our version of it in Lumen pointing to that fork temporarily. And then once we've figured out what needs to merge and whatever, then I'll cut over to the main EIR repo from there. Yeah, but otherwise, trying to sort that out as like a blocker of the release wouldn't make any sense.
So now that we do have folks starting to be assigned to client work, and we probably will have more as things roll along, how does that change anything here? Are folks going to keep working on things in their free time, or Hans, are you only?
And I'm going to be, yeah. I'll keep working on this regardless of what I've got going on at Darkhead.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna do stuff that I can do. I think there shouldn't be too many blockers, at least for Paul, but like anything that's needed, I'll do.
I mean, I'll still have my Dockyard Friday, which will just be Lumen. And like it's like normal conference stuff. I don't pull off a conference talk, although these are 20-minute ones, so maybe like during a normal work week, I quite too much. So
yeah, I would consider, like, as far as prioritization, like BJ, like I'll available time that people have to put into the project should be to support Paul at this point, to help him get over the finish line.
As we start moving along, I may start, asking folks for like just estimates of how much time they think they've got, but I want to wait until some of the new stuff, people's new client work and so forth kind of settles out, because I know that's still too new for folks to have a good sense of it. So in the next week or two, I'll probably start asking folks for like, how much time in a given week are you able to put to this, so we can put reasonable expectations around goals.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I actually have to jump off and get onto another call. We'll have to prep for a call at 11. But I'm going to stop the recording. I don't know if I drop, if everyone else gets kicked. If not, people want to continue chatting, they're welcome to.
Yeah.
I think we're probably all wrapped anyways.
So we'll at least find out. Everybody will stick around just to answer the question of